Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight we have returning guests, a very lovely woman we've had on before, medium Carole Obley. She's also an author. We've had her on for a few of her books over the last few years. She has a new book out, The Art of Sensing, a guide for staying true to your soul's journey through the challenging times. She's a very brilliant woman. I've enjoyed her books. I've been so busy this week. Replaced the water heater, kid got suspended from school, work in the yard. I'll be honest, I've only got to scratch the surface of this book, but I've loved the previous one, so, we're both going to learn about it tonight. But she's never disappointed. She's a great medium. Now, we only have her till midnight Central Time, 1 a.m. Eastern. I don't know if we'll end the show early. We'll see how I'm feeling. I've been suffering some insomnia. What should have been up reading the book, right? No, just tossing and turning. So I might end the show early. We'll see how we feel. But I know Carole, she's got to be up early, so we only have her to midnight tonight. And, of course, lots of weird as always. We'll have the World Wide Web of Weird, and we'll try to fit in some phone calls. I don't know if we'll fit them in with Carole or not. But maybe after, if she leaves, we'll definitely see if any of you guys want to call in and talk a little bit. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Got a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and get rolling into the show. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. As I said before, I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight's guest, Carole Obley, will be joining us after the World Wide Web of Weird, after our first commercial break. Joining me, as always, though, is my beautiful co-host, Jamie D. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
Doing well, thank you.
And one more test of it, because we were having issues. Did that sound all right with the music this time? Is it still working good?
It did, and I see Rob.
Yes, I'm getting him right now. And then Rob, I was just getting the intro. Rob from St. Augustine, Florida.
Who?
In the house.
Where?
Glad to have you here and have you both. Weird Wednesday, everybody. Weird Wednesday. Check it out. If you can't get enough of Paranormal Soup, every Wednesday night, 11 p.m. Central, these two are talking about the weird as well. And a lot of Florida man stuff. I'm sure he got Florida man right here to represent.
You know it.
All right. Well, speaking of all these kind of weird stories, we do have a lot of weirds. So let's go ahead and roll into the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, I thought I'd start out with this article I found amusing. I got the coast-to-coast version from Tim Binnell here. Here, in the age of disclosure and more of us open our minds and eyes to what's in the sky and believing something's going on, there's those who still don't. Like this article, UFOs dismissed as absurd by renowned astronomer at Chilean congressional hearing. Yes, we're going to talk about this, and we'll get to the last story to kind of wrap that up for the World Wide Web of Weird. But yeah, how do you feel about this? Are UFOs absurd? For those listening on the Paranormal Soup radio network, we are a webcast streaming out live to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. But if you want to come watch, I will narrate as best as possible. All right, so yeah, I got this from coast to coast here. Unexpected questions about UFOs at a Chilean congressional hearing prompted a stern response from a renowned astronomer who dismissed the idea of aliens visiting Earth as absurd. Absurd, I tell you. According to a local media report, the interesting exchange occurred late last month during a gathering of the country's Chamber of Deputies Committee on the Environment. During the hearing, which examined how a planned industrial project might impact a nearby observatory, member Cristobal Martinez seized the opportunity to ask one of the invited speakers, famed Chilean astronomer Jose Maza, about the UFO phenomenon. We talk about all this stuff in South America, particularly so many sightings. It's a hotbed, and a lot of people there are very interested. Acknowledging that this question might evoke some chuckles from those in the attendance, the politician somewhat nervously explained that the astronomer's considerable expertise compelled him to ask, have you ever seen, I don't know how to say it, a flying saucer? While the question was put forward with a laugh and the observation that everyone wants to know, the answer to the UFO mystery, it quickly became apparent that Maza was not amused by the unexpected inquiry. We have never seen anything, the astronomer replied, calling the concept of visitors from another world a joke. Ever the educator, Maza noted the enormous distance between the planets indicated that it would take a staggering 40,000 years to travel to the relatively close Alpha Centauri star system that is a mere 4 light years from Earth. Further diminishing the possibility of extraterrestrial visitors, the astronomer mused that it's absurd that aliens would make such an arduous journey simply to scare someone and leave. Lest there were any doubts about where Maza stood on UFOs, he ultimately compared the phenomenon to fantastical tales of Santa Claus, flying reindeer, and Peter Pan. The astronomer's strongly worded response to the unusual question subsequently became a viral moment on social media in Chile. And people going, you're a jerk. I beg to differ, my friend. I beg to differ. I know you look at the stars and you don't see aliens out there, and there's a vast, vast universe and a far, 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 far place for them to travel to us. And I do agree. I don't think they come here just to scare us poor, silly humans. And look at ancient cultures and their legends and so much evidence of past civilization being more advanced that possibly we were visited and helped. Besides the fact that, there's billions of people out there by now in the history who've seen these things, and they've been documented through ancient thousands of years of recordings. And yet, because you can't comprehend the idea that some species has figured out how to get around that loophole of Einstein's, speed of light travel, you can't accept it. And that's not very scientific. And to call it absurd is, I can see where you could be like, well, I don't believe it, but this is why. But maybe there's a valid point. Maybe they have technology we don't know, but as far as I've seen nothing. That'd be an honest reply, not to be a total pompous ass. I don't know. Maybe. But,
Explain how those people from, hundreds of thousands of years ago drew pictures of flying saucers on a cave wall.
Yeah.
Hell of an imagination.
Yeah. Or we're taught, all kinds of metallurgy and math and astronomy, and civilization suddenly popped out of nowhere, and architecture we can't explain, Pumapuco, or I always butcher that when I say it, and, the pyramids, all these things, yeah, I know. It's just impossible for them to get here because it's just too far, and it's just an absurd idea, I wait you to wait till my last article of the night,
No,
all right, let's move on, though.
Absurd.
He's absurd, yes. Well, this person, I don't know if they think it's absurd. They were in next one's from Cancun. I got this also from Tim Binnell from Coast to Coast. Motorist in Cancun was left scratching his head in the sight of an odd red UFO that lit up the night sky over Mexican City. According to local media report, this curious sighting occurred in the early mornings hours of April 1st. believe that maybe, I mean, things happen on April 1st. Doesn't mean it's April Fool's. The unnamed driver was stopped in traffic, letting his eyes wander as he waited. He'd continue on his journey. The man was taken aback when he noticed the very sizable illuminated object out on the horizon. Awestruck by what he was seeing, the witness managed to briefly film the peculiar UFO, marveling, "Have you seen the skies? Guys, this isn't happening in Cancun." Excuse me. Also, a different red light brought an end to the footage as the traffic signal changed and the man had to resume driving. Go ahead and play it. I've seen flares and stuff. I don't know. This is pretty weird. Just one light. I don't think that's a flare. But I mean, it could be many things beyond a flare or drone. It's hard to say. But he's not the only one seeing that.
Yeah.
He's not the only one. Let's move on to number 3. Because I want to get the last one. There's a lot to the last one. I won't have time to read the whole article, the last one. And then over, that was Cancun, now all the way over to Kent in England. In this video, said to be recorded over Kent, England on March 26, a huge red sphere glows over the nighttime landscape. UFO researcher Scott G. Warren writes that it appears to be too powerful of a glow to be any type of known aircraft. And like I said, that last one seemed pretty powerful glow. To be any kind of known aircraft, and it just sitting there as it came from a tunnel from below the ground from a deep alien base. That's what they're saying about this. Go ahead. Scott C. Waring is saying this is coming from an alien base. Don't know. Does seem weird and does seem bright. All right, let's move on. More stuff that are just absurd. It's just absurd. Let's move on to some ghost stuff. We'll get back to the alien stuff. All right. Number 4. This one will have audio, Rob. I hope we can get the audio working. Otherwise, I'll do it on my end for it. But a worker in Argentine cemetery claims to have captured the sounds of mysterious ghostly wails echoing through the empty site in the middle of the night. Creepy footage of the incident was reportedly filmed at the Santo Tomé graveyard by a bewildered witness as he walked through the otherwise barren burial ground. In the video, the worker cautiously ventures down a dirt path, turning his flashlight on and off as the chilling cries pierce the peaceful but eerie surroundings. Suggesting that the job of the security guard may not be his calling in life, the witness opted to keep a considerable distance from the perceived source of the sound rather than investigate what was causing it. You are a security guard. You're supposed to go look. I hate to say it. And what if somebody was injured or hurt? You probably should go look. But I get it. It's a cemetery, and somebody's wailing. It's creepy. Go ahead and play the bean footage. Not getting audio, though, I don't think. Yeah, no. Heard something. Nothing. Nope, not hearing it. Well, this is the video footage. I don't know if Rob can get the audio, but I can get the audio part of it. Let me see.
Yeah, I don't know why the audio is not working. I hear it fine.
Yeah, let me.
En el cementerio llaman a la policía.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd walk in the cemetery from hearing that.
He's like, this job don't pay enough.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it probably doesn't pay enough to do that. I get it.
That one he was just stopping on sounded like it was going to get real creepy.
Again, is this just viral BS that people spend to get clicks? I don't know. There's so much of it.
It could be a Halloween tape.
Right. But would you, if, you're paid, I don't know what the crap, I know all the security guards I know don't get paid nothing.
No.
You're getting paid crap wages. You're supposed to be keep an eye on, I guess, a graveyard. I don't know who hires a security guard for a graveyard. That seems a bit suspicious. But maybe they have issues. Would you investigate? Would you? For me, the curiosity, I would, number one, but that shouldn't actually be number one. Number one would be just to make sure somebody isn't hurt. I'm just saying, somebody could be in jeopardy and peril, so I would check on that fact. Honestly, the number one reason is because I'm a curious cat. I would, that's how you get killed in a horror movie.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. I'm the white guy. I'm the white guy in the horror movie that gets killed because I'm stupid. Like, we go hide in the shack with the chainsaws. Okay, let's go. Move on. Okay, what is that? Is that Kitty? Wow. All right. Where were we? That was cemetery. All right, now we're on to ghost disputes gunfire, or ghost hunt disputes gunfire. All right, yeah, we got another great ghost hunter story coming up. Ghost hunt dispute sparks gunfire exchange in West Virginia. We've had a lot of these kind of ghost hunters gone wild stories lately. What's going on? In the wild story out of West Virginia, a ghost hunter found himself exchanging gunfire with a homeowner in the neighborhood where he was conducting a paranormal investigation. The strange case, which became to light over the weekend, reportedly began late last month as Fed Shrewsbury was searching for spirits in the community of Amigo. While exploring a remote neighborhood looking for ghosts, the paranormal investigators nearly became one himself when he crossed paths with an angry resident of Corday Sargent. While it's uncertain what specifically caused the strife, it was significant enough that the homeowner fired off a warning shot with his rifle, which prompted the paranormal investigator to flee the scene. However, he wasn't quite ready to give up on the ghost hunt. Undeterred, shots are done, I'm done. Done. What are you going back? Undeterred by the unsettling incident, Shrewsbury revisited the location a few days later, along with 3 children of unspecific age. What is wrong with you? Following another ghost hunt in the neighborhood, the group set up about leaving the area when the sergeant shot at their car. Now, this guy shooting at their car is an a-hole. You don't just shoot shots off at people. Call the police. Rather than making a hasty getaway with the safety of the kids in mind, Shrewsbury instead opted to grab his own gun and exit the field and fire several shots at his new rival's house. In response, Sergeant squeezed off a few more rounds, including 2 that hit the car containing the juvenile ghost hunters, who one imagines were terrified by what was unfolding around them. Man, no problem with the ghost. It's just you crazy ghost hunter people. Yeah. One imagines we're terrified by unfolding around. Police are said to be investigating the strange shootout, though no charges have been filed in the case. I was part of my first ghost hunting group, had it in their charter, no firearms allowed. None. And I have many gun owners in our group, proud gun owners. But we understood why. If we had to go somewhere we felt we needed to bring a fiirarm, then we needed to not go there.
We had controlled my own groups.
If you felt you needed a firearm to go there, then you probably shouldn't be investigating there. We had an insurance policy for our group, that was the rule. And I had the head of our group, I won't say names, violate that. And I called him out on it. And I'm all for people being able to protect themselves. I have a gun, I get it. But if you're doing an investigation, if it's not safe to be there, then you don't go. And you don't bring children. Yeah, I get it. I'm not saying you shouldn't have.
Go down the freeway without a bulletproof vest behind my chair.
I hear you. I'm just saying there's a reason you got, ghost hunting groups, real legitimate ones, have insurance policies and that. They don't generally like you to have a gun on the premises. I was saying if you shoot somebody while you're on investigation, it's going to be really bad. Real bad for everybody involved. I'm just saying I don't think it's a good idea. All right, let's move on. All right, this one's a weird one. Zimbabwean university professor plagued by mysterious supernatural fires. Esteemed university professor in Zimbabwe says that his life has been torn asunder by a series of mysterious fires that seem to have supernatural origin. The bizarre case began 6 weeks ago when, let me see if I get this right, Mthuzile Moyo, seasoned journalist and educator at Zimbabwe's National University of Science and Technology, noticed things in his home were suddenly and unexpectedly bursting into flames. Initially chalked up to being strange, isolated incidents, the fires soon became unbearable as they increased in their frequency and destruction while also physically tormenting the professor. I'll suddenly feel my skin burning, but when I scream for help, my family can't see any fire. Mayo revealed. They pour water on me, and only later do the blisters appear. It's like something invisible is attacking me. Eerily, the professor observed that the recurring infernos appear to be specifically aimed at upending his life, as throughout odd ordeal, the baffling blazes have claimed all of his business suits, two pricey leather couches, and the various important legal documents, including the deed to his home. The most costly instance today is which made Mayo most come forward with the story was the loss of a whopping $20,000 in cash that was lost in the most unusual fashion. Fearful that the money which came from a recent property sale could fall victim to the mysterious fires plaguing his life, Mayo smartly thought to store the funds in a bucket of water, but found that he could not enact his plan fast enough. I left the money in the wardrobe for just 20 minutes, he recalled with dismay, when my wife screamed and ran in and we saw smoke. The cash was ashes, but the wooden wardrobe unharmed. My clothes perfectly fine. The fire only wanted the money. Given the fire misfortune that has repeatedly befallen him and his family, Mayo and many others speculate there could be a supernatural explanation for the unnerving series of events. Told by some judicial hearers that his predicament is a result of a curse cast upon him, the professor spoke directly to the aggrieved individual who may be behind the madness in the house of ending his suffering. If I've wronged anyone, even unknowingly, I beg you come forward, let me make amends, Mayo implored, lamenting that my family can't sleep, we're afraid to leave the house empty, afraid to stay inside, this isn't just about money, it's about our sanity. I've heard of these kind of cases of spontaneous fires around people, and you wonder about spontaneous combustion when he says he had like his skin's blistering afterwards. This sounds like a curse. It sounds horrible. I don't know. I don't know what this guy does either, And, do you not have any suspects of somebody who curse you? I mean, you got to piss somebody off for that kind of mojo. But let's see. All right, we got the last one. This last one goes back to the first one, in a sense. So, aliens are absurd. Well, not according to the CIA, right? All right, well, we already know so much. They don't want us to know, but when it comes to the CIA, I think they definitely believe in aliens. Now, this one, I don't know how I feel about this one. This is a pretty crazy story that's come out, and it's been circulating around. But it comes from Freedom of Information Act in the 90s, and I'm not going to have time to read this whole article, so I'll kind of give you the gist of it. Chilling declassified CIA files reveals aliens committed revenge massacre after UFO was shot down. So this happened like somewhere in 89, 90, I'm believing they're saying, like 35 years ago in Siberia. It was a Russian training group, and they had a craft flying above their head, and they shot it down. I'm giving the really small, quick gist of this because we're going to run out of time if I try to read the whole article. And these alien creatures, described pretty much like, grays, they had dark, big black eyes and kind of deal, and it sounds like they're describing grays, merged into one in some kind of like Japanese, like where they reform into one robot. No, but it said they merged into a big giant sphere that shot out a light, and there was 25 men, and 23 of them were turned to stone, and only 2 survived. This is a crazy story. Sounds like something out of a magazine. But what it came from is when the Soviet Union collapsed, the CIA went out there to get as much documents that they could. As the government was falling apart, a bunch of their secret UFO program documents were getting out, and they got a plethora of stuff. And this is one of those things. Now, we do it to them, and they do it to us. We also throw out a lot of crazy fake stories. This could be one of those. This could be one of those to scare the Americans. I don't know. We have no way of knowing. But it's interesting the way that they describe this. And they say in this that they kept the craft somehow. I don't know what happened to the aliens. That's not said. They merged into this giant sphere and attacked them, but disappeared. I don't know. But for being absurd, our CIA spent a lot of time to get these documents when the Russian Soviet Union was collapsing. And specifically on the alien stuff. There's a ton of them. And I find it interesting to turn to stone. It's very biblical, Maybe this is made up stuff to fool the Americans, but it did come. It's part of the Freedom of Information Act. It is something our CIA recovered. There's so much. Like it was the Ark of the Covenant. We covered that, a couple weeks ago? Was that it? Yeah. That was a remote viewing thing. And like I said, it's like nothing. You know, the way they title it is CIA finds Ark of the Covenant. No, the remote viewer did under the CIA, but it shows you the CIA had an interest in it. They asked the remote viewer the question. They are believers, or they just watch Raiders of the Lost Ark and were like, let's ask one of the remote viewers, is this real? I don't know. But they're believers in something bigger, and you know, they obviously don't think aliens are absurd.
Oh, that's absurd.
They're using our taxpayers' money, and not that, you know, obviously they don't think it's absurd. They do a lot of absurd things with taxpayers' money, though. I don't know, like you know, putting bombs inside of cats or something. I don't know, or killing presidents, you know, our own or others, you know. But they believe in aliens. They don't think it's absurd. So what is it with astronomers like this at that beginning of the article? Is this absurd? It's a distance. I'm like, I understand you're super smart and you understand all the science and how much it would take to get here, but can, in your mind, somewhere in there, fathom the fact that just because you don't understand how they could jump over that time, a civilization that's millions of years advanced of you hasn't figured it out? As might as well think we're the center of the universe, for frick's sake. I just don't
that
get some people are so smart.
All the answers.
Right. You don't know. There might be a way to change the system.
I've always thought since I was a little kid that it was pretty egotistical to think we are the only living, you know, creatures in the entire universe.
We got to go to commercial break, but I want to pull up really quick because I just saw Alan's comment. Alan, who, you know, is in South Korea, he's called in. Same thing happened when a UFO flew into the ADIZ zone and went over the DMZ into North Korea. The North fired at the UFO, and it didn't end well in that area that fired at. Really? Ooh, I haven't heard of that one. Inquiring minds want to know more. All right, we're already ran over time. We got to go to our commercial break because our guest tonight is Carole Obley. We're going to talk about her newest book. She's a wonderful guest. We've had her on before. Her new book is The Art of Sensing, a guide for staying true to your soul's journey through challenging times. When we come back from the short commercial break.
You were brought here for one purpose, necromancy.
A ceremony dating back to the pre-Christian era. It's the art of reviving the dead. It requires involvement with evil spirits by the person performing the act.
The devil god brings life to the dead.
No, please. No, please.
And death to the living. Necromancy. Starring Orson Welles and Pamela Franklin. From Cinerama releasing. In color, rated PG, parental guidance suggested.
If you are interested in discovering the truth about the paranormal and want to hear from leading researchers in the field, join Justin Brown on his 3 weekly shows named My Paranormal Soapbox, Necromancer Live Show, and the Supernatural Symposium, live on Facebook, YouTube, and InterfaceDeath.net.
He is conducting an experiment into the combined effects of sensory deprivation and hallucinatory drugs. The subject of the experiment is himself, and the experiment is out of control. Ken Russell's Altered States, a film that must not be missed, is in the West End now. Altered States, Certificate X.
Hello, I am Fernando Martinez. I think by now you know I am an emotional kind of guy. People stop me in the street and say, Fernando, what the hell is wrong with me? Silk shirt, hairy chest, enough aftershave to drown a household pet, but I still cannot get a woman. I tell them you are an ignorant fool. Without a symbol of power and fertility around your neck, what kind of woman is going to respect you? That is why I have teamed up with Medallion Man, the shop for medallion needs. Medallion Man caters to all levels of masculinity. For the strong, silent type, a medallion the size of a hubcap will say everything that needs to be said. Even singing medallions for the Casanova, who knows music is the food of love. Model trains, dollhouses, diapers, whatever your interest, we've got the medallion for you. Don't forget, every woman knows if you can't support a medallion, you can't support a family.
This is the sound of a space clock aboard a U.S. satellite 180 miles above the Earth. No one winds up this timepiece. It's powered by a tiny battery, a battery that delivers power for years without replacement. Now the same type of battery, the Duracell battery, can bring new reliability and long life to your battery-operated equipment. Radios, cameras, toys, all run far longer. Duracell batteries, the long-distance power cells, outlast any ordinary battery. The same type of battery that keeps space clocks running for years can bring long life to anything powered by batteries. Dura, as in durable. Cell, as in power cell. The Duracell battery, made by Mallory.
Switch to DCS ranging.
240, nominal to profile.
We're in the pipe. 5 by 5.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Carole J. Obley. Carole is the author of Wisdom from the Spirit World, I'm Still With You, and Soul to Soul Connections. She has communicated with souls who have crossed into the spirit world through thousands of private and group sessions. She has earned a reputation in her geographical area as a real deal among psychic mediums. She travels nationally to speak and teach workshops and maintains a practice of mediumship based in near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We've had her on a few times now. And she's always a great guest. I love having her. I wish I had time this week to get through her book. I started tapping into it. I've loved her other previous books. You're definitely going to want to check it out. Her new book, The Art of Sensing, a guide for staying true to your soul's journey through challenging times. We're going to get into that. We only have her for about an hour and a half. We'll try to maybe last half hour fit in some phone calls for you guys if you want to call in and ask some questions of our guests. But we got a lot to get to. So let's go ahead and get rolling into the show. All right, let's get our guest out of the waiting room. How you doing tonight, Carole?
Hi, Jason. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you back on the show. I apologize. I did not really get the chance to get into the book this week. I've had a lot going on. I need some help with my own sensing, I guess, here. But I want to get into this tonight. But before we do, it's been a little while since we had you on. So I remember for you, I don't know what you want to or shortened version of how this started for you, but for you, you were kind of a little bit of a late bloomer as a psychic medium.
I was, and well, I guess I'm revealing my age, but I didn't come onto the pathway of mediumship until my mid to late 30s, and that came about from a really bad thing, and that was a fire. And it burned me out of the business. It was a business I was running. And overnight, the fire took me out. Yeah. And for about a year, I had no idea what I was going to do with my life at that point. Just really directionless. And, one of the things I've talked about in many interviews is this thing called divine timing. And it operates completely independent of, our rational mind, where we think we should be or what we want to do. And that kind of leads into the topic of the art of sensing, which is following the voice of your soul. we need our mind, that's for sure. I mean, the mind,
Yeah.
it does what it needs to do as far as rational thinking, balancing a checkbook. Language actually comes, through the left brain, the rational mind. But the soul operates in a much different frequency. And I was inspired to write The Art of Sensing, particularly as a result of looking at the world and the immense chaos and division that we've been in. And
Yeah.
so, just like my other books, and there have been 4 previous books, it came to me very spontaneously. And that's how all of my writing has been. It's just when it's time, it's time. And that's what I mean by divine timing. That is in accordance with the soul's uh, prescribed mission that we all have before coming into the physical world.
I mean, it's weird. As I started getting your book a little bit this week, it's weird that I didn't get to check it out at all before I scheduled you, and I didn't really get a sense of what it was totally about. But I started talking to my wife right before I got in your book. We were talking about the inner voice. That some people, they did a study, hear an inner dialogue, while there are some people, a more rare phenomenon. I have a nephew who claims this. They don't have an inner dialogue. And we're talking about, what is that inner dialogue? What is that inner voice? And I was telling my wife, I'm like, well, I've thought about it for a long time, and my perception is that's not me. It's a part of me. It's part of the mechanism of survival. It's the voice that'll tell me, hey, you better not do that. Might have a bad time. It's fear. A lot of times, that voice. But there's another voice that I can hear, and it's more of like a faint whisper. And that's the one I try to listen to,
Yes.
or more of a knowing.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to put it. Intuition, and by the way, I distinguish between 2 types of intuition. The first is something we all have, which is that gut knowing. And, most people have had that where, you're driving to work and something comes up in your mind, and it's like it's a whisper, don't go down that particular road or that highway. And then maybe you follow that and you find out, oh, there was a bad accident down there. Or we come in contact with people every day and we get this sensing of whether that person is emanating, like a positive vibe or a good
Right.
sense. And then we get it, if I need to stay away from that person. So that's what I call sort of the garden variety of intuition. And I've taught intuition development over the years of being a medium, which is, about 30 years now. I really took a lot of training in the 90s, and to date have, now I think on my website I have 15,000 readings. It's probably over that.
I didn't see it in Gavin's. What's the name of your website again, or what's your website?
Soul Visions, and that's plural, visions, soulvisions.net. Soulvisions.net.
I didn't have it in my notes. So I forgot I was going to ask you that. Sorry.
I'll get that shirt out too.
Thank you, Jamie. Because we share the links of your book and the website in the chat room for people.
Thank you.
Yeah. To me, it's one of the most fascinating things because I've had strange experiences since my childhood. But that voice, like I said, there's the normal inner chatter dialogue, the monkey mind. I love how they describe it in Buddhism, But there is another voice. There's a knowing, and there is another voice I've heard. Small little voice, you know what I'm saying? And that's the part I'd love to learn. And I think that's what you've been trying to do with this book and others, is getting people to hear that voice.
Exactly. And, the sort of garden variety intuition that we all have, we all share, is a little bit different. I mean, it can act as a protection. It can act as an internal guidance system. I call it the inner compass. Spiritual intuition is the voice of the soul. And the soul as the eternal energy that we are. And the English language is kind of bereft of terms to use for this
Yeah.
phenomenon. But that inner guidance that says, this is what you need to navigate towards. This is a calling. I have always felt that mediumship, connection with particularly evidentiary mediumship, and also with healing. I've done many years of hands-on healing as well. In fact, I started being highly trained as a healer. I believe I'm from the school that mediums are born, not made. It's sort of like being an athlete or being a musician. We can have a predisposition to that, and we develop it. So the voice of the soul is important. Not just talking about mediumship, but the path that we need to travel on as far as what we planned in the pre-birth state. And I've done a lot of study of that in Wisdom from the Spirit World. There's a whole first section on that, and
Yeah.
it's called "You Signed Up for This."
Yeah, I love that
And
part of it.
it means that the soul, in its infinite wisdom, has planned what it needs to evolve, and spiritually.
I think that's I believe in that. I really do. I see a lot of evidence that from people's experiences, but I still think it's like the hardest pill for people to swallow on it. Saying I chose this, I chose these, people that have really bad upbringings or really bad start in life. It's hard for them to accept, like, I chose this. That's the part I think for some people it's really hard.
It is, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because certainly nobody would consciously or rationally choose a childhood filled with abuse. And in no way am I saying that that person I think I'll come into a family in which, I'm going to be horribly abused. However, it's what is absorbed from that experience that lends itself for the soul to evolve through the experience.
Yeah.
And that can be true of any traumatic thing that we face in life. Another example, one that obviously I've dealt with many, many times, is grief, the loss of a loved one. I've done many readings for people who have lost children, some very young children, some, much older. It really doesn't matter the age.
No.
The trauma and the grief of losing a child is quite profound, and people are really never the same again.
No.
But there is a way to navigate through it by listening to that inner voice, that still small voice. We've all heard that phrase of the soul, and saying and whispering to us, go in this direction, or seek this person out, or seek this book out, or organization, or whatever, because it will help you through the trauma.
I just recently had a listener email me, ask me, like, when we do another ITC or have a medium on, where you call in or reach out to their loved ones. And I said, that's fine. We do have those guests on that do that. And we do some spirit box nights, not a lot, but we do. But what my suggestion was to him was to just get a journal, and at night, out loud, because I've recommended this to several people and it's helped, give permission to the person you're trying to talk to you lost. Give permission to them to talk to you in your dreams. And it worked for me. It's worked for others. And, maybe not everybody is, like you said, born to do what you do, right? But we all have this ability. And I think our loved ones are always there. And, if you give the permission, allow them in a positive, and your intent is good, you can have this communication with someone.
100%. In fact, I developed a workshop years ago. I taught at Lilydale, the spiritualist community in New York. And it was using a photograph of the loved one, or it can be a pet do. I've done many readings in which pets come through, and I'm always so touched by that because I have an intense passion for animals and their well-being. And so using that photograph, having your journal there, and you can ask questions. This might take a little bit of practice for listeners who do want to do that. Don't become discouraged if it doesn't happen right away.
Right.
But the photograph helps you, that's a capturing of the essence of that individual. And so, it helps you to tune in. I also suggest to people that they have what I call a calling card. And it's just like a business card. And ask your loved one to give you their unique or specific calling card. It might be a sensation that you get in your physical body. It might be something, an electrical feeling about your head. It might be an emotion that you have. It might be a scent that's called clairalience, where we get scents, and spirit uses that a lot because you probably know this, but scent is the most closely associated with memory.
Oh yeah.
Out of all our senses.
My father and I actually talked about these things before he passed away.
That's what I was just
In
gonna
what
say.
ways would I be, knowing that it's you sending me a message, and we have our word together, and we actually discussed these things, and so far he's made a lot of use of it.
For my wife and her grandmother, it's the red cardinal, which when she was a little girl used to call Red J. And the morning of her grandmother's passing, there was the red cardinal out there. And just the other day, the morning before I went to work, I saw the red cardinal out there. And then I get a call later in the day that Liam's suspended, my youngest son. It's like, oh, thanks for giving me. I had a bad feeling. It's like Mimi was sitting right out there to remind me that was her grandmother. There's ways, and the photograph thing, to me, that's so true on, because one of the most psychic things I ever did wasn't trying to, at the moment I was holding the photo, I guess I was, but I got a person's full name pretty much by holding a photo of them. They were deceased in the photo. It was a photo from their funeral, but I had no idea what their name was or anything. I knew their first name. I pretty much almost nailed the last name, and I knew all this stuff about them just from holding this photo. And that's the only time that's really ever happened, but it was because I was holding this photo.
Sure. Yeah. Many years ago, when I took some of my early training at Delphi University, and it's about 2 hours north of Atlanta, Georgia. It's a mystery school, and one of the things they teach is in-depth channeling. That's the name of that course, in-depth channeling. So it's not really channeling where, really real trance channeling like the famous American psychic Edgar Cayce did. Cayce left his body. I mean, his soul was temporarily out of the body, and then his spirit guides came in. So one of the things that we did in the training was to exchange photographs with other students, and we had to give impressions of that person in the photo, and then the other person would verify it. So it's astonishing, what you can glean from the photo. And it is a good vehicle to enter you into that person's energy. But the most important thing that people need to understand is that the soul, and this is how mediumship is accomplished, there is a blending of the soul in the spirit world with my soul as medium and the soul of the recipient. Now we're talking about a reading here. Yeah. So it doesn't have to just be a reading. What is the strongest energy in the universe? It's love. Love is the strongest. It binds us. And it is because the soul is eternal, it is never diminished or destroyed through death. And, the soul is always operating. It's timeless. this physical plane is the only place where we have time. It does not exist in the spirit world. It's right here all the time. So it's very difficult for most people to grasp that. I know that I can't,
Right.
that it's always right now. But because the soul doesn't care about time, it doesn't know about time, it operates in this infinite universal way. And it's always guiding us. But it's up to us to tune into it. And that's really what the art of sensing is about, is how to eliminate, I don't know that we totally eliminate it, but to reduce or to lessen suffering in our life. I mean, there's probably not a human
Yeah.
being alive that in some way hasn't suffered loss. I mean, we're all going to suffer loss at some point. We might be betrayed. We might have people who, in some way abuse us, use us, or whatever it might be. The soul is always operating, as are the whole chapter I wrote on natural laws, which are universal laws that the soul operates within. Probably the most familiar one is the law of karma. So, what we do comes back. That could be good, it could be wonderful, it can be very negative, or it could be relatively neutral. So I thought that it was important for people to really understand these laws, which can be kind of complex. Most people know about, the golden rule: I treat other people how I want to be treated. Well, that's the law of karma. And the more that we understand that, the more that our life is going to improve. And we're operating within that framework of the higher consciousness of the soul.
I've always wondered if karma is just the universe's way of trying to make us see somebody else's perspective. Because I always tell my kids, you don't know what it's like to be in somebody else's shoes. You don't know what that kid goes home to. Try to explain that to a 9-year-old that beat the crap out of somebody.
What goes around comes
Yeah,
around.
yeah. But there's instant karma, and I think karma can take a long time too. Some people look at karma as like, yeah, they'll get theirs in the end. I don't think it's that. I think it's a lesson for everyone.
Well,
I
there's
like
karma
how you said that.
lessons.
I was just going to say to Jason, I liked how you said that. It's a way of feeling what someone else feels. The interesting thing is that when we die and we go before the Council of Elders, which are wise beings who, I mean, they're very elevated in consciousness. I don't know all the answers to, have they been here in physical form? I don't know. What I do know is that we are shown, most listeners have probably heard about the life review.
Right.
We're shown our life from the time we were born in the body of the little infant to whatever age we pass at. And so we're shown that in a matter of what we would consider seconds. And one of the really important things to understand is that every single thing that involves another person, we feel that. We feel how that other person felt. And there's no escaping that. There's no, trying to hide that. It's very transparent in the spirit world. I have found that out. In fact, countless readings, somebody's father coming through and saying, boy, I wish I would have spent more time with my family. I was a workaholic. I wish that I wouldn't have treated you badly because I was an alcoholic. Because why? Because
Regret.
I've gone through the life review.
Yeah, regret.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you're gone, that's it. You don't get to settle these things till another life, right? That's how.
Well,
I mean,
what
I think
I
people can, but I just think that in general, people that don't, aren't trying to connect to the other side. That's how it is for life for people. That's the disconnect. They're gone, and this is unsettled between us. And I think that's why spirits are trying to reach out.
That's very true. And I always tell clients that I do readings for, if you need to say something to somebody, do it now.
Yeah.
Because it's not that you can't do it when that person is in their spiritual form, but it's somewhat more impressionable on your own consciousness to do it where you're actually verbally saying it to right to that person's face. Now you can do it with the photograph as we discussed, and that person in the spirit world will receive that. So and don't ever think that they don't know about our thoughts and feelings, because I can tell you 100% that they do know. They do know. And they also know when we're going through a rough time. They know when we're ill. They know when the family is, at odds over something, or people aren't speaking to one another. So it's not a separate place. The spirit world is right here. It's a matter just like a radio or a television. You gotta tune into it.
And you wonder what it's like for them on the other side, with time not existing, or whether they can see ahead, like, people being warned of an impending accident by a family member, coming through. They're able to see somehow down that timeline. You ever seen the movie Interstellar?
I have not.
It's sci-fi, right? But I think one of the most beautiful parts of that whole movie, I don't want to give too much away in case you do go watch it, but there's this whole concept to this movie where he is in a, what you call it, tetrahedron, or he's basically seeing his moments in time of his daughter. He's on, you could say, the other side maybe. But they're like little pieces of puzzles he's pulling out to see different aspects of time. Maybe the future, it could be the past. But he's getting to glimpse or communicate through her through these different parts of time. But he's only getting little pieces, in here and that. You wonder what it's like for them, like what parts of, how they interact with us in a concept of no time.
Well, I think that might have actually been inspired, whoever wrote that script. It might have been inspired by, the after-death experience.
That's what I always thought. Yeah, I think that's kind of the concept they're getting at a little bit too. I mean, it's all about kind of space and sci-fi kind of, but that is the element there, I feel like, to it.
I think our soul actually, we can liken the journey of the soul like that too, because unless you're really tuned in, and that's why I tell people, get still every day. I don't care if it's just for 5 minutes, meditate. People have a misconception about meditation. They think that it means, oh, I'm not going to have any thoughts. My mind's going to be blank. That's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. So I do this thing called mindfulness, and it's very simple. A child can do it. You sit quietly, and you focus on your breath, and the mind will start, and you'll think, oh yeah, did I put the garbage out, or what do I have to do tomorrow? What are my chores tomorrow?
Like I said, the monkey mind.
The monkey mind. The voice, Eckhart Tolle, one of my favorite spiritual teachers, calls it the voice in the head, right? So the voice in the head is constantly going. It's a treadmill. That's what I call it, the treadmill of the mind. And so the breath, the brain really can't focus on more than one thing at a time. So what you do is you interrupt the treadmill with the breath. You put the focus on the rise and the fall of the chest, and thoughts are going to arise, and you pull back from them, you become the observer.
Exactly.
And that's what people struggle with. So if you get still and you do that on a consistent basis, you're much more attuned with your soul. That's the soul's territory. That's the soul's domain, is when you get quiet.
I think for people, it's also... Oh, go ahead, Jim.
I get my biggest moments of clarity during those times where I just sit quietly and still, and I just let my brain do what it's going to do, let it run where it's going to run, and I do the breath, and I I think about the way the wind is feeling on my skin. I'm focusing on, hearing the birds and all these things. And all of a sudden, I just get this clarity that is amazing.
Yes.
I take breaks at my work, and I'll take 20 minutes in my car. People are like, why do you go out your car? Just so I can get quiet. And I just like I said, focus on the breath, and I just let the thoughts pass through my mind. It helps with my anxiety, and I try to get to that quiet place. Sometimes I fall asleep, yes. Sometimes I fall asleep. But a lot of times I don't. Most of the time I don't. And I'm just trying to relax with the day's anxiety. I let it go. I let it pass. And when I've, tried to tell people about, when I think about this, and I talk about this a lot with friends and family, and even with my sons, I'm trying to teach them mindfulness, especially a 9-year-old that has anger issues. I'm trying to teach him, responsibility for his actions and what, not letting your emotions control you. To find that inner calm. I'm trying to teach him that, like, and I asked him and my son both, because they're one of their best friends is one of these kids that says, I don't have an inner dialogue. I was talking to them about their inner dialogue, and what I said, when you have that voice, it's not evil, it's not bad, it's whatever. It's a mechanism of your brain. It's a mechanism of survival. I don't think it was even always with the human consciousness at one point. I think early primitive man might have not even had an inner talking voice at one point. This is something that's developed
really
from us.
interesting, Jason, that you mentioned that, because I am a voracious reader as well as, I've written books, but I speed read, and I just read that
Really
recently about Cro-Magnon man, these
that's something I've
different,
thought about.
the different stages of human development, that it was all about survival. And you got to go out and kill animals, or eat plants and have shelter. And so the author was saying that maybe that didn't even exist. Maybe the soul, our concept of the soul being of spirit, right, wasn't even present or bonded to the form.
Right.
So that's very interesting.
See, I've had other mediums talk about this, about that there's a period of time with, like, a child born where the soul, it's not that they're soulless or anything. The soul's there, but there's not, like, it's not a full integration yet until a certain age. Have you heard of that? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
That when the infant is developing within the mom, that soul goes in and out. That soul goes in and out, because it is quite a shock for the soul to come from a place of infinite peace, and there's no pain, and there's no duality. That's our real home. That's where we come from. That's where we're going to go back to. The soul goes in and out to adjust to being bonded to, and it's a process that occurs. I just read about this. I knew this a long time ago, but it's interesting to read it again in Michael Newton, PhD books, The Journey of Souls, Destiny of Souls. And he talks about that with his clients. He was a hypnotist who discovered that people weren't, they weren't just trying to lose weight or quit smoking or whatever. They were going in between lifetimes. And one of the things he discovered was the incarnation, that the soul goes in and out. And some souls don't really fully bond until right prior to birth. So it's very interesting.
Like, you're saying some souls are brand new. Is that what you're saying?
There are new souls that are. I mean,
but you were saying that they don't incarnate until that moment.
They don't fully bond with the physical body of the infant until just prior to birth. And as you can imagine, I mean, birth is pretty traumatic for the soul because, as I said, it's coming from.
Some people claim to remember being born. There are a small percentage of people of like eidetic
Yes.
memories and can remember that. I can remember. The reason I've always been fascinated by this topic, and if you're all right with it, I'm not going to do another commercial break while we got you on. We'll keep you until you're ready to go here at would it be 1 a.m. your time if you're Eastern? I don't know.
Yes.
But if you're all right not going with the break, as long as you're good, because I want to keep talking about this as much as we can while we got you. When I was really little, I mean, not one yet. According to my mom, when this incident happened, I was not even one yet. So she doesn't believe me when I try to tell her I remember this. I remember being in diapers and not being able to speak. And like my cousin was trapped under this bed, and I remember trying to get my aunt and my mom to come upstairs to get him out, and the memory's there, like the struggle, like in a sense, like I had a thought, there was thoughts there, right? That I needed to get them to get him, right? I had thoughts, but I couldn't, and I almost feel like I had inner thoughts, like a voice, but at the same time, I couldn't speak. I couldn't tell them he's under the bed. I had to get them because I couldn't speak. And that memory has confused me forever, because in the memory, I can almost feel the thoughts I had, but I couldn't speak. So what is that? You know, I'm probably 9 months old.
Yeah, usually most people, except under hypnosis, cannot recall their life before they were able to use language, because there's whatever the neuroscience is about the imprinting of memory with language. And so most people, they could have memories, starting maybe at age 3, age 4, something
When language
like that.
develops.
When
right?
language develops. And I mean, there's certain things, and I'm sure it's true with both of you, that, stick out from your childhood. They're just little snippets.
Right.
Like you described that stick out to them. And, we were very young when these things happened. But the soul is there from the time of birth. So, and again, some souls don't truly bond with that body until just prior to birth. And so they have to learn, the soul has to really learn how to use that brain, a physical brain
Right.
with 5 physical senses. Because in the spirit world, we have senses, and all of us have these. I'm sure a lot of people in the audience have had this experience. You wake up from a dream, you have a taste in your mouth, you have a particular scent, maybe feelings.
Smells the one I get. I get a lot of with smell. I have like a schnauzer. I smell things at times that I can't explain. I think somebody did try to call in maybe a second ago. I am going to open up the phone lines here soon, guys, if you want to call in. Why has it got this? What is this? Oh, I went to voicemail. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just noticed I am trying to get some calls in. We will take a couple calls before we lose here in the next hour. So if people want to call in, they are open. I will try to fit you in. Sorry, we can continue.
Yeah, well, all of these senses that we're talking about are you've heard of the 3 clairs. So clairvoyance, seeing, clairaudience, audience means listening, and then clairsentience, which are emotions, but it's also a sensing. Through many years of doing mediumship and many interviews, people have said, how do you get the information from the spirit world? And it's through the faculty of clairsentience, which is, if I held up a painting, but it's covered with a cloth, and I say to you, I'm going to remove this cloth, and I would like for you to tell me what you sense from this. What's your impression of it? And I remove the cloth, and you go, oh, that makes me feel really good. It makes me feel uplifted. It makes me feel happy. Or maybe the opposite, it makes me feel depressed or sad or it's scary or whatever. So that's what clairsentience is. And that's how it arises in all of us. Now, you don't have to be a medium for that to
Right.
happen. And it's usually through the solar plexus, which is the gut area. There's an important chakra or energy center there. We have 7 main chakra. There are minor chakra in the palms of our hands, in the bottoms of our feet, and the knees, and the joints. But these main senses come through the chakra system, the 7 main chakra. So when we're sleeping, those are much more active. And that's why when you wake up, sometimes you're still in that energy.
Yeah.
I remember one time, and it wasn't pleasant. I had this dream that I was eating a bug.
Ugh.
And I woke up and I could taste this insect.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it was from a prior incarnation. I had some Egyptian incarnations that,
Really?
oh yeah, yes,
M- uh, uh,
one of them
to me,
was not good. So I think I was starved. I don't know if you're familiar with that movie, Papillon, with Steve
mm,
McQueen. This was a true story. And Papillon in French means butterfly. And he had a tattoo of a butterfly. Steve McQueen had this tattoo of a
yeah.
butterfly. But it was a true story. He was imprisoned on an island in the French Guiana, and he had been a thief. He was highly intelligent. Anyway, the punishment there was severe, and he tried to escape. So they put him in solitary confinement, and they starved him. And I remember watching this movie for the first time. And here's Steve McQueen. He's got like rags on, and his hair is all discombobulated. His teeth are falling out because he has no nutrition.
Yeah.
And he catches a roach and he pops it in his mouth. And I remember looking at that and going, oh my gosh, I had this vicarious feeling of kind of knowing what that was like to be
Yeah.
starved and to look at insects. And so it might have been this bleed through. I call them bleed throughs from prior incarnation that I was having.
No,
But there's
I
many
believe it.
things.
I've definitely seen my two past lives through vivid dreams. It explained a lot.
Hmm. Yeah, dreams. Remember now, the Akashic files, which are, I call them the files, the Book of Life. Edgar Casey called it the Book of Life. The Akashic Library. Each soul has their book in that library, and you can access it. It may come out from the subconscious when you're sleeping, hypnosis, or past life regression. And you don't have to be in a deep trance for that to occur. And the soul will actually speak to you through that experience. Say that you go through past life regression. And I actually used to do those with clients. Now what I do is Akashic record reading. I just read the person
This is kind of
and
a
say, this
personal.
is what occurred. These were the themes.
Actually, on that subject, I kind of because this is recent conversation with my wife, back to my 9-year-old. She was asking me if they do past life regressions on a 9-year-old, because Liam, we've dealt with this past life issue with him. I mean, when he was 3, he would have these tremendous a 3-year-old, tantrums, right? But these were crazy. He got the cops called on us, like him screaming to bloody murder, right? But he would talk about bodies on a hill, and he said he's a horrible person, and things like that. They're just not right for a 3-year-old. He also told my wife that he chose us. I saw him years before he was born as a translucent boy in my parents' living room. So there's something special about him. He told my wife he chose us. So a year or so ago, he got in trouble at school, and we had a conversation, and he brought up the bodies on the hill again and how he's messed up. He's messed up. And I'm like, what do you mean bodies on the hill? You've talked about that before. And he says it's just something I've seen in my when I close my eyes. I see it, and I'm like, I told him, like, describe it. Tell me what you see. It's like it's cold. There's snow. There's bodies. There's blood. I did horrible things. My friends left me. He's just going on. This isn't a crying fit. He's telling me all this. I'm like, get him to calm down. I'm like, tell me what you know. Like, what comes to your mind, a word or a name? And he just said Colmar. And history of World War II, there was a place called Colmar Pocket, and it was a place that the French and Nazis fought over this hill. And it was hand-to-hand combat, brutal, and yeah, a bunch of Nazis were deserting at the end of the war, and it really put chills to my bone. And he has like these issues, and he thinks he's messed up, and he could be the sweetest boy in the world. Nobody can believe that he would snap like he does. But he does. When he does, it's bad. It's like pure on fury, rage, anger. I won't even say what he said to the principal. And so my wife's like, he has therapy. We're working with him. He's been grounded. But I don't yell or scream at kids. I try to have a conversation with them. That's what I've been doing. And not about past lives or any of that, just about actions and consequences and his emotions and how he feels, But my wife brings up that about the past life. Do they do that for kids?
Yeah, I have not heard of that for children.
Yeah, that's what I said.
But who knows? I mean, it might be useful. Mainstream psychotherapy does not really get into, some of it can be holistic, certainly addressing, mind, body, spirit. But I found that it really doesn't get into, past life trauma. And it sounds to me as though he was highly traumatized. I mean, this is still fresh with him. And the point about choosing, what I explain to people, speaking of the soul, which is, what this book is about, what the art of sensing is really about, following that voice. The soul chooses, and it's always a two-way street. Souls choose one another. So on some level, you and your wife chose him and vice versa. And so usually we travel in these things. This brings up another topic I explore in the book, and it's soul pods. What are pods?
Right.
Groups, soul groups. And we travel much like, dolphins. I just watched a show with dolphins in that pod that they're traveling, So we do that with other souls. And sometimes it's not, it's not pleasant. And if we can get through that and get underneath and see how is this helping me to evolve? How is this situation really helping me to evolve through going through something painful, something that like you were saying about your son, that creates a lot of frustration because you see him suffering, you want to help him. And I'm sure he's very frustrated as well. So getting underneath to touch the soul, sometimes that can be accomplished even by hands-on healing with no words, so that we're just, transmitting healing and reaching the soul in that manner. So that might be an option for you as well.
Yeah, I was like I said to her, it's like, I mean, I had Chris Lee did a past life regression, and in that I was imprisoned. In that past life he showed me, but at the same time, like, for a kid, I don't know if that's the right way. I mean, if there's a reason we're not supposed to remember, should we dwell down that with a kid? Like, it's traumatic, I don't know. I've been torn on that idea. I wouldn't have him go through a past life regression is what I told her. But maybe some of these other routes or avenues with it to deal with it or what he's had. What I'm just trying to teach him, just like you're talking about, is mindfulness. Trying to get that through to somebody who feels this kind of rage come out of nowhere. We say gets it from his mom because she has some of that problem too. But like, just going from, 360 with this kid. I mean, we've warned teachers, they're like, oh, he's the sweetest kid. I'm like, just wait.
Yeah, interestingly, you mentioned about World War II. I have seen in my practice of mediumship over 30 years, I've seen many people who experienced trauma like that. And interestingly, a totally different group of souls that started incarnating when Casey was doing his readings during the 20s and 30s from Atlantis, because they had a tremendous technological knowledge. But what they did was they actually destroyed themselves by misusing it. And so we're sort of at this pivotal point right now with technology, with AI coming in, that it could be very dangerous.
We've got a lot of different technologies we could kill ourselves with. We can name the
Absolutely.
list, like,
Yeah.
and with World War II, the biggest one of them all was the nuclear bomb. It's right there. And we still have that problem.
There's a lot of souls, because of the traumatic way in which they died, the death camps, which I could never go into. I would become ill, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I have read about them, and it was just, I can't even believe human beings survived that. It's just amazing, the survival instinct that these people had. A lot of them who died, a large segment of the Jewish people who were in those camps reincarnated very quickly, because the soul needed to balance that, or sort of
That's
detox.
interesting. Well, you heard of the kids from, like, the ones they said been reborn from the 9/11 attack. There's children have been born that have memories of that attack. That's like, wow, they didn't take long to come back. And that was even said about the soldiers of World War II, that a lot of them were the soldiers from World War I, are reincarnated and now in their 20s and fighting again. That was something that was said about, World War II. I can't remember what mystic or person put that out there, but I always wondered, it's its own kind of karma in a sense. I mean, we're coming back and redoing these things, and violence begets violence. It's like, we're into these especially soldiers. Like, if my son was a Nazi soldier, that's what we're getting at here. He says, I did horrible things. That's what he said. And what I told him was, I said, everybody has. If you look at the past life scenario, we've all played the good guy and the bad guy. We've played a lot of different parts. And it's not about judgment. It's about learning.
Yeah. We've all been a victim. I'm putting that in quotes because I've written extensively. I wrote a lot about the danger of victimhood, taking on that identity of victimhood in Wisdom from the Spirit World. And because it disempowers people.
Exactly.
And it really abdicates personal responsibility.
Exactly.
So victimhood is not a good thing. I've seen so much of that in society now. This victimhood mentality. It's very, very dangerous. But, tuning into the soul's infinite wisdom instead of the ego. Now, I got away totally from the New Age, quote, New Age philosophy, because the more that experience that I gained in my work of mediumship, the less that I believed what was, some of the tenets put forth in New Age philosophy.
Yeah.
And a lot of it did not make sense to me. A lot of it I felt was very disempowering. The ego should not be demonized. It is necessary. The personality should be a servant of the soul, not the other way around.
Right.
So we can use the personality. Everybody, every human being has a distinct personality. Sure, we have similarities, but the personality is a vehicle for the soul to use to advance itself. because nobody's going to be you, nobody's going to be me, nobody's going to be you. So, we can use that to enhance what we're bringing to the world through service. And so the personality, and I write about the ego, the personality, and the soul. What are the differences there in the art of sensing? So, using all three of those to evolve and not looking at any of them as superior, but yet knowing that the soul is what is eternal. Because when we die, the personality really dissolves. And of course, we know we're not going to have a physical brain anymore. Everything here that you see in the physical plane is temporary. Everything here is at some point going to crumble, going to die. It's the nature of the physical plane. It's ephemeral. It's not meant to last. What is
I
not temporary is the soul.
I always saw the personality as being maybe part of the essence of the soul, so that when we passed on, that was one part of us that would stay with our soul, was kind of our personality. Like if we were kind of mean in real life, living, when we moved on or when our soul moved, we would still kind of carry a little of that. So
We do. You're
that's a different.
absolutely correct. We do retain. That's a very good point. We do retain memory and sort of the imprints. I call them imprints from each lifetime. Now, there's a whole thing, and I don't think we have time, and it's not part of the art of sensing, where we choose the personality, we choose the body before we come here. And do I need a personality that's kind of laid back to advance? Does the soul need that this time to advance? Do I need a personality that's going to be, really lively and extroverted? And, so it really depends on what the soul chooses to continue to evolve.
That makes sense. I hadn't thought of it that way before, and that does make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, people might say, well, then if we don't have the personality, when I do readings or certain mediums do readings, how can you give a description of the deceased person's personality? Because that often comes through in the reading, and the recipient of the reading will say, "Oh yeah, that was my mom, or that was my dad, or my brother, or whatever," and it's because for purposes of that communication and lowering their consciousness, coming into the physical plane again, blending with me, they can take on that memory, or that memory can be ignited, reignited of, yeah, this is the way I was. I was always telling jokes. I was the life of the party, for example. So that's how that works. But generally, in the spirit world, it's sort of like, my spirit guides said to me, when you come back over here, you will look at your physical life much like when you wake up in the morning and you had a dream. And, the dream, when you were in it, unless you're doing lucid dreaming, which I never do, I'm actually in the dream, experiencing everything. And it feels very real. That's what it's like when we look back, when we have the life review and we look back at the physical life. It's like waking up in the morning and we go, wow, that was so real. I thought I was really doing that. But it was sort of, you heard this, that this plane is an illusion. And I don't want to get too esoteric about it. But in reality, it really is an illusion, in that it's not the true essence of the soul. But the soul is present, but it's not the true um, authenticity of the
Gotcha.
soul.
It's like when you hear people their near-death experience, like how detached they seem to be from the whatever, like if they were in an accident and they see their body broken, they're above it, and they're like, oh, there's my body broken, detached. Like they're fine. It's like there's a calmness there, like once they've entered that realm or that reality.
Yes. Yeah. And I've had souls come through in mediumship, and they'll describe, um, unfortunately, I've had the experience of reading for many people who have lost somebody through an opioid overdose. It's so prevalent. I mean, it's an epidemic in our world today. Fentanyl, some of them have been heroin. Most of them have been fentanyl because it's so incredibly powerful. It's
They were giving out Oxycontin like it was candy not that long ago. So
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. But the people will come in and they'll go, they'll say, I stayed with my body because I couldn't understand why I was up here, but my body was down there. And sometimes they'll describe the resuscitation, like an ambulance was called or paramedics were called. They'll talk about the people who were present when they died. So there is an awareness. You probably both have heard the stories of someone having a surgery. And, maybe they had a near-death experience where they actually left the body and they were looking down at the surgeon and they were, they come back and they describe, oh, he did this or the surgeon did that or, whatever. So there is the consciousness of the soul that is always aware. That's why if you talk to somebody who's in a coma, they're aware of you on that level. They are aware of what's going on. A medium can actually even communicate with somebody or someone who's highly sensitive, can communicate with, the body is in a coma, but the soul isn't. And actually, there was a television show on. It was a short run, but there was a woman who was a medium, and she did that. She communicated with some people who were in comas, and she would relay to the family what that individual was saying. It was amazing.
I mean, they're there, just like, I think if the person's dead, they're still there, either way, there's a spirit there to communicate to.
I
they're not
had an
gone.
experience, unfortunately, again, there was a friend who tragically was killed on her way to my house, and she was resuscitated, but she had severe brain damage. She goes to a very good hospital here in the city of Pittsburgh, and they put her in a drug-induced coma. And I don't know if you've ever seen anyone in that state, but it's very eerie. It's very eerie. It's just like controlled death. Okay. One morning, I wake up, and in the process of waking up, this is where I always get my own messages. That in between state of sleeping and waking, I heard her voice in my head. She was still in this coma. And she said, pray for my mother, because her mother and her father, but it was mainly her mother who was absolutely devastated by this, could not make the decision to take her off of the life-sustaining stuff. I know it was her soul coming to me. And she said, please pray for my mother. And I did. And then within, I don't know, several days, the family did take her off of the life support. So, the soul is, we go through grief when someone dies. And we lose a pet, when we lose a child, when we lose a parent or a cousin or whoever it might be. And we often think about, that person is gone. But I think that's the illusion. Yes, we have to grieve their physical death. We can't reach out and hug them. We can't pick up a phone and call them. We can't hold their hand or whatever. So we have to grieve that. But we can also know in our heart that we can communicate with them. And, you don't have to be a medium to be able to do that. That bond of love is the connecting link.
The most common, doing the show, I always say this, doing the show and letting people know what I do and what I'm into, the most common story that people come to me with, isn't their haunted house or a flying sauce or a Bigfoot they saw. It's usually an experience of a loved one that's passed and that came to them. That's the most common experience. And it's one of my favorite to hear. And I'm honored when people share it. It's a very personal experience, and, not everybody gets to have it, and I don't know those reasons. But a lot of people do, and they a lot of times keep it to themselves, But I think it's a very common experience because I think it's one of the lessons in life to let you know there's more to this. There's way more to this world and this experience than you could ever imagine, and that you're not alone. That's why I think my grandmother showed herself to me after she passed, to let me know she was all right. She died of Alzheimer's, and it was her way of showing me she was fine on the other side. Because I was having horrible nightmares after she passed away of her breathing. Like, when you see somebody in their last breaths, I'd have nightmares of that. And it's the day of her wake. I think I had a nightmare that night of that. And that day of her wake, I saw her clear as day in a mirror at my work. And people felt her in the store. Like, she literally had a rush of air come through the store. 2 people felt it at the moment I ended up seeing her in this mirror.
Yeah, I write about the experience of losing my first grandpa. It was in the late 60s, and he had had a stroke and never recovered from it. And I was only 10 at the time, and I had never been to a funeral home, and my parents took me, of course. And I went, and I remember seeing him in the casket. And just as you said, I slept with the lights on that night. I mean, I was just a little kid. And I had nightmares about his hands because they looked like wax, I was very afraid of death, very afraid of death. Quite ironic that I got into this field of doing what I'm doing. But I do want to share a story on that note of how I opened the art of sensing. And it's one of these things of, following your soul speaking to you. I remembered again and I grew up, I'm a child of the 60s,
Yeah.
and I was watching the Miss America pageant of all things. And it was Saturday night. And in those days, we had these old-fashioned hair dryers. You put your hair in curlers, and then you put the dryer,
My grandmother had one. I remember.
the cap on. And so I'm sitting there with my mom, and we're watching, and one of the contestants comes on, and it was the talent portion of the show. And this woman was an interpreter for the deaf, and she did the sign language. And I was mesmerized. And that was her talent, she interpreted some type of poem or something. So I turned to my mom, and I was very excited, and I said, Mom, that's what I want to do when I grow up. I want to do that. And my mom just kind of like, yeah, that's like the fifth thing you told me in a month, that you want to do. It never occurred to me until years later that my soul was actually speaking to me in that experience, that I wanted to be this interpreter for people who couldn't hear. And so at that age, I mean, I didn't even know anything about mediumship. I grew up in a household, that word and the word psychic were never mentioned. I mean, I grew up in a church. I went to Sunday school every Sunday. My mom sang in the choir, all this stuff. I didn't put two and two together until much later
Yeah.
that was my soul going, you're going to do something like that. You're going to interpret for people who can't sense. So I use that example to say, even when we're children, we get these messages from our soul.
Makes sense to me. I used to sit there with a tape recorder and a microphone, and do like fakes, like even sports announcements or announcements of something or whatever, talking, And this whole idea of doing this didn't come to me till way later. I was a musician and writer and all this other stuff and paranormal investigator, and it all led up to this. But if I think about what I was doing as a little kid, yeah.
That really brings up a memory for me as you were speaking, Jason. This is so, I haven't thought about this in years. Again, I'm talking like I was 11, 12 at the most.
Yeah.
And I had a jump rope. I mean, it was simple times. There were never no cell phones. There was no texting. I still don't text to this day. Anyway, we had this jump rope, and it had on either end wooden, what you held on to, so you could jump rope. My friend and I used to go in my basement. We would put on 45 records, and I would hold the end of this jump rope, pretending it was a microphone, and I would sing and talk into this microphone. So you jogged that memory for me by talking about the tape recorder.
Yeah. But
So,
yeah,
and I've done
we get
so
little
many
clues.
interviews and communication. One other thing I would like to tell the audience too about knowing another clue, another way you can know your soul's journey is through astrology
Oh, yeah.
and the birth chart. There are markers in there. And I'm not going to go into all of that because we would be here till
Right.
tomorrow talking about astrology. I've studied it for many, many years. I actually do astrology readings. They're mainly karmic, meaning I can look at a person's birth chart and I can see where they've been, past life, and where where the soul needs them to go to continue to evolve. And so if you can pull up your birth chart on the internet, you can go to different astrology websites, and there's a ton of those.
We've had a couple. I've had a couple guests that have recommended some. We've done some of that on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You
I don't
can-
understand a
you-
lick of it, but
Well, I've studied it for about
Yeah.
16 years, and I've read multiple. I took formal classes. I mean, I
Yeah.
took classes for years and years, and also studied videos on YouTube with astrology and so forth. But I know enough that I can be really pretty accurate with reading the birth chart, and it's amazing what you can see of where you've come from and where the soul is pushing you for your mission. And it really is. It's about your mission. And in the art of sensing, there's a chapter on different points and a couple of planets that you use in the birth chart. And so I encourage people to, to look into your birth chart, and you can really see and understand yourself better.
what's some of the ways because that's where I find the complication. Like I can get the chart, like there's some sites in that, but just like translating, understanding. What's your recommendations for people to like kind of understand their birth chart, though?
Well, I mean, you can do a lot of study on the internet. There's sites that are better than others. There's actually a lot of really good, informative astrology sites out there. I
Yeah.
mean, I marvel at the work that someone has put into creating that sort of website with all that knowledge. I think it's useful for people who are curious about that to invest in having an astrology reading, with someone who is
Well,
qualified and knows what they're doing.
it's one of the things I think it did come up in our wife's conversation about our 9-year-old is having a look at his birth chart and seeing if that could give us any clues, you know?
Yeah, I would recommend that to you. I mean, yeah, because there are several markers in there, probably more than several, that you start looking at the aspects. The aspect just means relationships between the planets,
Yeah.
the houses they're in, the south node of the moon, the north node. I mean, these are all technical terms, but I'm simply saying that you can study it as it's a tapestry. It's the language of the soul. And
One
I
of the
see that
things,
somebody popped up and said,
yeah,
the time of birth. Absolutely. It's the fastest.
that's a hard one
moving-
sometimes for some people. They don't have that,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, you know what? I had to actually write to the Bureau of Vital Statistics, and that's usually wherever you were born. Find out where the Bureau of Vital Statistics is, and you can get your birth chart. You have to ask them to put the time on. A lot of them don't have the time
Right.
on them. So, and it can make a difference, particularly with the moon, because and the ascendant to the rising or the rising sign, that can change. Can change within 4 minutes. You know, so it is good to have the
so you need to be within that 4-minute window somewhere in that with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We were
And
doing that. It made sense to us one night because I messed up and I gave the guy, I don't remember what guest it was doing birth charts with us. And I accidentally, I think I gave PM and my mom, I think, corrected me. It was like,
Well,
you
it was
were born
military time.
Yeah, or something like that. I don't know, but I was born AM, and right, or am I screwing that up if my mom's watching? And then when they gave the corrected reading, I'm like, oh, this makes more sense. So
Yeah,
it does
'cause
matter.
we're using the military time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're actually in that case you'd be talking a 12-hour difference. Yeah, the moon changes signs every 2.5 days. It's the fastest moving thing in the chart. The sun, I mean, it takes 30 days to approximately 30, 31 to go through a sign. And then you have the big outer planets like Pluto. We are now in the age of Aquarius because Pluto shifted into Aquarius from Capricorn. But I think about 4 months ago, 3 or 4 months. And Pluto spends anywhere between 15 and 20 years in one sign. So these big outer planets, Neptune is usually
And Neptune right now.
Neptune has changed signs too. It's a big, big deal when these outer planets change signs. Neptune just transitioned into Aries.
Wasn't it 125 years or so ago, the last time, and that's when when we were having a civil war?
Yes.
I think it was the last time it was lined up like this.
Exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, you can look at what was going on, the planetary alignments during the American Revolution, the Civil War, all sorts of historical things, because these are cycles. And the soul, our individual soul, again, talking about the soul's wisdom, comes into a particular time period knowing that, like, what is the consciousness going to be during this time?
Right. It's the period of time you're dealing in.
Think about the Civil War. There was that division, right? There was, one side, no, we're going to keep slavery, and the other side, no, it's morally wrong. And so, that division that actually caused the death of so many people.
We do have we do have somebody on the line. I want to get to him before we run out of time. I think I know who we have on the line. Who do we got on the line?
Hi, Jason. It's Azariana.
Hey, Azariana. Thanks for calling in.
How is everybody tonight?
Doing good. Do you have a question for our guest tonight?
Yes, I do. I might be. I was wondering about what she had said in the beginning with souls, because and you were saying about your son with his issues. I was wondering if we all have fragments of our past lives in our souls and we retain them, is it possible that the past lives that were shortened because of whatever circumstance, do you think that it could be, I'm trying to think, it could take over because they've, it sounds silly, that they may be jealous, they may want to feel, they feel like they were cheated from that life?
I'm not sure if she means if they had passed young. Is that what you meant?
Well, past young or violent or,
Oh, yes.
you know, things like that, you know, like, could they, it's the wrong word. I don't know a word. Could they possess and overtake the person to fulfill that?
No. In fact, cases of possession or demonic stuff, those are very, very rare. Very rare. I know it's very popular, and a lot of the paranormal places or shows talk about that sort of thing. I have not personally seen that, and I know other people who haven't. I'm not saying we can't have negative influences, because certainly we can. But this whole phenomenon also, which is related, like walk-ins, I have not seen that in my work. I just have not seen it. However, I have seen where souls who, for example, I was talking about people who passed from an overdose, they might reincarnate very quickly because their natural lifespan would have been much longer. Suicide, sometimes. Those souls may choose to come back much more quickly. Violent deaths. We were talking about, the Second World War. People who, died in the gas chambers or, in the death camps, all of this sort of thing. A lot of them reincarnated very quickly because they left under very bad circumstances and they needed to come back again to work that out. So, and actually, I've had the experience where there are souls that I've communicated with who will say, I was really angry that I died. So, until they go to the spirit world and understand and get rid of that anger, they're sort of stuck in that, why did this happen? And there can be also a good bit of confusion, that that the soul maybe is trying to work out or whatever. So, I mean, there's all different circumstances. Every time I think I have this work that I do figured out, something else comes down the pike. It's just amazing. But there's many, many different situations.
Well, thank you, Azariana, for calling in.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Like I said, possessed might have been the wrong word, but I couldn't think of another word to.
We're all trying to describe something that's sometimes a little beyond our limited comprehension of it sometimes, but I think you were doing a good job. Thank you, Zariana.
Yeah. Well, thank you for answering my question. Very interesting tonight. Thank you very much.
Have a great night. I saw somebody else trying to call in. I only got the one line here. They were trying to call in. You got like a minute or so to try to call in if you want to try. Whoever just did, you can try calling back in. I'll try to catch your call. But yeah, you got to imagine, like, for the Holocaust survivors or people, or not survivors, the ones who didn't survive that went to the other side, the reason to come back is rebirth is a sense that you get to let go of that trauma for a while.
Yes. And this place on the earth is a great laboratory. It affords the soul the opportunity to experience time, to experience a physical body. There are the soul will use the body to advance. I'm thinking of souls who take on, I call them courageous souls. They take on, some sort of terrible physical impediment. Maybe they, have some sort of mental deficit. People who have physical deficits or challenges. These are the ways that the soul can use the body to advance.
Sorry.
So there's a lot of different things that are present here that don't exist in the spirit world. And, but, it's also a mirror, because I have been I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful and blessed to have had glimpses of the spirit world through readings, and also when I'm dreaming at night. I know that I've traveled there. And so
that's why I recommend the dream way for people to connect to their loved ones through dreams. I got one more call. One more call I'm going to try to fit in here, if you don't mind. We'll try to fit one more person in here. We got somebody on the line. Who do we got?
Hello from Korea. 안녕하세요.
Oh, yeah. How you doing, man?
Hey, pretty good. Long time no talk to.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you were able to call in.
Hi to everybody listening, and hi to your guests and yourself. Jason, on your son. I've been in the military for a long time. That sounds like PTSD that he's handing.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought of maybe like Boy Scouts or hiking or something where he can direct his energy?
Oh, we had this conversation.
Actually,
that's a whole other conversation I want to get into. But real quickly, one of my ultimatums this week was to him is like, you're choosing something, because remember he did martial arts, and I was really proud of him. And then
martial arts would be good. Yeah.
Well, then it wasn't so good when he beat the crap out of a kid, though, right? But I said, I don't care if you get back into martial arts. I don't care if you're doing something creative or you're going into sports, but you're doing something. You're going to be doing something. I said, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to pick something, but you're doing something. I'm done.
Something structured, yeah. For your guest, I have a question for her.
Yeah, make it quick, because she's got to go soon, so that's why I wanted to fit you in now.
Okay. Is there different levels of intuition? What I notice, like when I'm in the high stress situations, is stuff that could hurt me physically, that I'd switch into like a higher gear, almost like intuition, but it just comes and goes. I can't control it. Is there any way to control to get to the higher intuition state? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a very good question. As I said at the beginning of the show, really tuning really tuning into.
I'll take my question off the air.
Okay, yeah. I'll let you go. She'll answer. All right, go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, really tuning into intuition through becoming still. And I think the most important thing for people to be able to go to that higher level is the more that you practice it, the more comfortable it becomes. And then your brain will know, your rational brain will know when he goes into this state of being still and focusing on his breath, then this other channel opens up. And so it's sort of, training your rational brain to get a little bit quiet. And so you build those channels, and by becoming quiet. And again, it doesn't mean you go off and sit on a satin pillow on a mountaintop. Meditation can be done anywhere. Don't do it when you're driving. But, carve out a place in your home, a little corner, or,
Here's my brakes in my car at work.
Switch your
The
phone
quietest
on.
I get.
And just allow yourself to, the more that you do it, the more effortless it becomes. People always go, how do you get into the mediumistic state? I have done it so many times that, and I don't like to do it. And I've had shows where I have to tell them, but please don't ask me for a reading in the middle of an interview, because I'm talking, with my left hand. but I have done it so many times that it's like flipping a switch. And so it will become that easy for you to, when you open those channels and, go to the soul self, it becomes easier. Each time that you do it, you reinforce it. That's how to make it more prominent, is by repetition and trust. You have to trust it. You have to trust it.
Al says, good answer. From South Korea. Thanks for calling in, Al. But yeah, it's something I'm trying to get better at, and trying to teach my sons, to get better at. Try to help like a 9-year-old that has, problems, like to listen, like, to get to that inner peace for him and for myself, because I have anxiety. We're all human. Nobody's perfect. And, to me, doing it, like taking the time to just, even if it's 20 minutes a day, just it'll be your biggest stress relief you could do. If anything,
yes,
you can relieve some of your stress. Trust me, you got to have a moment to give yourself to be still.
And in that stillness is where your soul's going to speak. Now, it doesn't always happen like on cue when we want it to happen. But this is why I say to be patient with it. Be patient with that process. And importantly, and you mentioned this earlier, have a piece of paper there or have a journal.
Yeah.
You can you might get
I'm bad about it
symbols.
too. I know.
You might even get symbols, and you can draw those as best you can. And sometimes in symbols, there's message. I've actually gotten clairvoyant images of sacred geometry. And I'm like, what is that? What does that mean? This doesn't happen all the time, but I believe it is a transmission of some type of spiritual knowledge. And it can come in a geometric form. And as I said, this is not a regular occurrence, but it has happened to me. And I believe that is from these wise beings who are ascended masters or the angelic kingdom, who are, helping us along the pathway.
Like I said, you're never alone. There's always, I believe in a higher power. Some people call it God. I call it the Force. But I had my moment where I felt it, and it's overwhelming love and compassion, no judgment, understanding, and knowing it's always there with you. You're not alone in the end, and you're never alone. So I try to tell people. Now, make sure you get out. Soulvisions.net is your website. Make sure people check that out. The newest book is The Art of Sensing, a guide for staying true to your soul's journey through challenging times. I thank you so much for being on the show with us again tonight, Carole.
Thank you for having me. Thank you to both of you. I've really enjoyed this. And the book, the formal publication of it is May 1st. It is available for pre-order right now through Amazon and my publisher, which is collectiveinc.com. It's also on Kindle, ebook, and there's a lot of wisdom in it, but it's very simply written. This is not a book where you're going to have to struggle and, take a month or so to read. You can pick it up and put it down. I like to write simply so that people can really absorb the information.
Yeah, I've never been disappointed in any of your books. I'm going to read this one. I'm getting it. I started it, and I think I'm going to totally enjoy it, and I highly recommend all your books to everybody. You definitely got to check it out. Thank you so much, Carole Obley. We'll get you back on. Next time you have another book coming out, let me know. We'll get you back on.
Okay. Thank you.
You have a great night.
Thank you.
So we'll continue on here a little bit with you guys. I don't know if I'm going to go a whole hour here, but we do got people watching. How's everybody doing tonight? Some guests can't make it the full 3 hours. I get it. I go late, and she's got to be up early. I have to be up early. I had a last couple Mondays off with spring breaks and stuff and all that, but I'm back to the school routine. But I'll talk to you guys in the chat room. I say love to see Al from South Korea. Thank you so much for calling in, and Ziriana. Don't forget, guys, too, we have YouTube Super Chat. You can donate to the show through that. We have YouTube memberships. We are going to be trying to do something soon. for our YouTube members and our Patreons too. It works for both. If you're a Patreon, we give you a link to our exclusive show. We're gonna do another. I'm trying to think of ideas of stuff to do. I don't know, Jamie. What have you been thinking about YouTube memberships, like for a special show we could do?
I was even thinking about like special maybe group sessions for people.
Yeah.
Like just for the patrons if they want to participate in a group session, and they can submit like 10 questions each or something that we ask, and they have their own like mini reading maybe. Like
I was thinking it was cool. You remember she was talking about like, the one of the things is I wish I could have been be a part of is like you hear like they have these psychic development groups, like people get together and have options they give each other. I don't know how well it would work over the internet and video call. And it's definitely something I'd want to do. Definitely not just to get members or be private, but it'd be something I feel that'd have to be a little more private, not live publicly, but having like kind of for the members like a development night. If the members are up for this, we'd have to pre-plan it.
And I do have some different little games to where I'll put out like 5 different objects, like a seashell, a rock, this and that. And then I have everybody look at it for like 5 seconds and then have them guess what they think I'm taking away.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I was listening to her when she was talking about the photos. Now, I feel like a part of it's missing because, like, I told you guys about I've told about it a billion times about me holding this photo of somebody who's deceased in the photo. They're literally deceased. It's them in their casket. And I felt that energy so strongly. I don't know if I'd feel that from seeing a photo on the screen, but sometimes I feel like I feel energy from just looking at a photo. I don't know about you.
It's always hit or miss.
But what do you think of this? I mean, you guys chime in here. You can call in. Lines are open if you want to talk for a minute or two. Call
and
in,
if you have your ideas, what you guys would love to see or have part of it, like, that would be great.
And even if you're not a YouTube member, but you're considering something you'd think you would be good if you might entice you to be a member, tell me. But what I was, how they had the photo thing. I mean, would you guys? I mean, maybe it's too personal or whatever, but where we could do that, like she said, they all kind of took a photo. Well, we could have them give it, plan it, and whoever the members are that want to participate, we could get the photos together and then put a photo up, and then we all write down what we're getting from it, or something like that, and then relate it to each person in the group. We could all bring one of our own loved ones and a photo of them. I don't know if that's too personal, or do you think that would be cool, or what?
It would be up to the person who wants to submit the photo, and then they would be giving permission for people to look at the photo and just jot down whatever it is that comes to their mind that they're picking up from the photo. And then they would be the ones to verify, like, who's, picked this up or that up.
Special Power says group meditation. We could do some guided meditation stuff.
Yeah, we could do some guided meditation.
I get the one deal is like I said, I don't want to do it.
I have the sound crystal bowls and everything too, like the sound baths.
Ooh, yeah. One of the things
I got meditate.
I got to look at my schedules. I'm trying to figure out a day we can do this because I don't want to do it I don't want to do it like I did the first test of it where I did half the show and then the other half was just for paid members. I don't want to do that. I want Sunday nights to be Sunday nights.
Yeah.
So I got to find a good night to do this. Wednesday's night, not a good night because that's Weird Wednesday. Check out Jamie and Rob. Weird Wednesday.
But it's Old special night that we get to vote.
Old City Blogs on YouTube is the channel. But stuff like that, I got to find good nights for. It's going to be easier once I get to summertime. I'm going to definitely do more. I know a lot of my members I'm probably going to only have for less than a couple weeks left because they were gifted, and thank you to Summerside for those gifted subs. If you are one of those gifted subs, just so you know, that lasts for a month. You have to renew if you want to stay on. I'm going to try to do something before that runs out. I'm trying to find a good date because it's got to work out for me and Jamie and hopefully Rob too, because I want all 3 of us to be here. And then hopefully it's a good time for the members that we can at least get enough of them to come to do something like that. I'm trying to think of things to do like that.
We could even do special spreads, like depending what month it is, what transient we're in, whatever's going on. Do some sort of special, like 4 or 5 card spread for them where they get their own little card, tarot reading.
Do the woo? Is it the woo? Like it's woo woo on Tuesday?
The woo-woo?
The woo on 2. Woo on 2? Alan, the spirit. Next Sunday is Tony Rothman. I don't have a lot of guests on that are ITC people anymore.
Yeah.
But Tony Rothman's been something I've been really interested in with the Spirit Com. And it looked like he's lately done some live tests of it. So I don't know if he's going to do it live on the show. We're going to talk about the technology. I don't know how long we're going to have him on. I know he's recently done some live tests, so we'll see how that works out. And eventually we will do another Spirit Box night for everyone, not for members, but for everyone, for people to call in. But I can also, there's definitely, that's the other thing, we can do a like more private session with members with the Spirit Box too. That might be one of the first things we try out for a membership channel. One of the first nights might be just a Spirit Box thing to see what we get with just the members. How to meditate to do a past life regression would be cool.
And then those ones wouldn't be posted publicly. They would, however we did it as the group, like everybody would get to.
Yeah, because that's one of the reasons, guys, that's the main reason I don't do a bunch of the ITC shows. It's a lot of work for me to go through and review and edit all those videos and put them up. That's the main reason. It's like I don't want to do it and then not have the time, and you guys wait a couple months before I even get the first video posted.
Well, sometimes, too, when they're listening to it, you let them listen, and they are the ones that will know, like, what's relevant. Like, we can pull up, like, what we hear, what we think is relevant, but they'll know, like, oh, that word means this, and so had a tattoo like that. So they can help with the verifying or validating. We don't always necessarily have to tag it, especially if it's just going to the people, because they're going to hear what resonates with them when they listen back.
Yeah, that's the hardest part of editing it, is like listening and like, is this something I tag? Am I sure this is what it's saying?
Yes, they're saying this word, but like, because
I'll leave
it's
a lot of
clear,
stuff
I'm going to
untagged because
put
of
it.
that. Yeah. Yeah. It's Spirit Box is hit or miss, and I warn people, go into it with good intent. If you're doing it on your own, don't get addicted to doing it. Try it out, experiment a little bit, but go in with good intent. Yeah, talk to the living more, because they're only here for so long.
Yeah.
Do some EVPs live. I've wanted to, and we've had EVPs show up on this show live. It has happened. It wasn't from a Spirit Box. It's happened.
Incredible.
I mean, the most craziest one was a long time ago with Katrina Cooper and Rhodey Speak. And Katrina was the guest, and Rhodey's was a friend that called in. And her friend, deceased friend of hers, came through. It's so clear, and more than once. And there's a clip of it, peanut butter and jelly clip, came through. That's an EVP. Now, we had Steve Huff on doing a Spirit Box at that time. It was not a Spirit Box. You could tell the difference. His had a total amount of a bunch of reverb on it, and this was clear. This was clear as day, like this person was right in the video chat with us. So I would love to find it. Yeah. I'd love to get live EVPs. You just tell me how to do it. What I'm saying? Like, either it happens or it doesn't happen. And it'll happen with the Spirit Box nights, because I think we bring that kind of intent and communication that they'll start coming through even without the Spirit Box. I think if the audience and us, all of our minds are focused on it, they'll start coming through without even the Spirit Box, and we have gotten EVPs on the show. And we've had it with some guests, I think, too. The energy's there. It'll happen. And there's nights we've had Spirit Box, I'm not feeling energy. This is not happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've gotten away from the Spirit Box thing. There's so much drama in that community I don't want involved in, and egos and stuff like that I don't want involved in.
Thing, and I'm not involved in.
Yeah, I'm still interested in it. I'm still interested in it. I'm just not interested in the whole celebrity thing. I don't really care reaching out to celebrities with the Spirit Box. I want people to call in, and if they're trying to reach their loved one, hopefully it gives them some kind of message or closure. But at the same time, I don't know if that's their loved one coming through. I wouldn't say that to that person, that, oh yeah, for sure, that's your loved one coming through. I don't know. You have to take everything, do you feel it? Trust your gut. Yeah, we've had weird studio stuff. We had stuff happen after the show ended. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I that's the other thing. I try not to abuse it. I'm saying, like, I want to do it, and like I feel we get the best results if we wait a while. Like we could kill. We get too much into it, and then then we're not getting any results. I think if we wait a while, let the time build up. Of course, Halloween show, we sometimes do a lot of it. Once it happened, yeah, Art had some weird stuff happen live on the show. You never know what'll happen. The Paranormal happens live. Next Sunday, like I said, is going to be Tony Rothman. I don't know if he's doing it live or not on the show. I'd really love if he could, though. Yeah. What's this? Tell the drama to your mama. You leave me out of it. I'll be all over here on my own, Lane. Yep, exactly.
Exactly. Just do my own thing. And I watch, I see, like, if someone's got a new build or, you know, they have a new something or other, I check it out and all that, but I'm not as involved as I was when things were different.
Yeah. And you know, that's why I was interested in Tony Rothman. He's trying to do something more and trying to, you know, do something different maybe, and, you know, maybe a new way of getting community. I feel like that, you know, it's still something we can experiment in and maybe find a better way of doing it, you know. It could get better.
Just another method.
But at the same time, I also feel you really want to communicate. You don't need a spirit box to do it. You really don't.
Not always, no.
You know, if you have a loved one that's passed on, I told this to a listener recently.
Yeah, you're looking for the signs, and then you follow the steps. And
Paranormal Soup, jbland@gmail.com. You can find my email in the description of the show. But if you want to reach out to me and send me, you know, talk or send me a message or tell me what you think of the show or give me a guest idea, that's where it is. This listener wrote me because they lost a lot of people. And you know, my heart goes out to, you know, grief is a horrible thing, and it can really weigh you down. And we've lost a lot of people in a short amount of time, and it happens sometimes. It really just does to some people. It's overwhelming, and you want some kind of closure, and you want to talk to these people. They're there. They're there. They're. I'm telling you, I'm a firm believer. You know, I say I'm a spiritual agnostic. I question a lot of things. What I don't question, without a doubt, is that our loved ones are with us. I know that. I've experienced it. I go by my experience, and I've experienced it full-heartedly. So. And for people who haven't, you know, I think you will in some way, somehow, some part of your life path will show you. I hope. I pray for you, you know, that you get that kind of feeling or that experience, because it'll open your eyes that there's so much more to the world. Yeah, you know, it doesn't change your grief. It doesn't take away grief. It won't do that. They're still gone. They're still not here. Like you say, you can't put your head on their shoulder to cry. You know, you can't hear their voice, you know, with your ears. So there's a separation there, but it can help. It can help cushion that some, knowing that they are still with you. And then there's a way you can hear them. I honestly think. You'll hear their, you know, don't you think about that little inner voice in your head? You know, it talks, it's your personality. But don't you ever have it where a relative comes through, in a sense, like you think of something that reminds you of them, and you can hear their voice saying something that they would have said in that situation? That's them. Yeah, you could write it up as just your subconscious remembering who their personality was, but that's them. It's left an imprint on you, and either way, it is them with you. You know, so if anything to take away from tonight, I love Carole. Definitely great books, and you know, if you want a reading from her, you gotta get in contact with her. Soulvisions.net. She doesn't do it live on the show. We do have mediums on that do that. Katrina Cooper being one of the number ones we've had on the show, and definitely highly recommend. If she comes on, call. You know, you get But the best way, if you really want the whole medium experience, is you got to set it up. Need the private session to really get the full experience of a medium, like a good one. You know, and that's why, you know, like Katrina does it. And she was a little frightened of doing it at first. I remember years ago, like, you know, because she did, you know, sessions back then. You know, the phone thing was new back then to her, and boy, she blew herself away and blew us all away.
And try it. You got to just put those fears away of screwing up and having people look at you like, no, it's not what I was thinking. Got to put those.
Well, that's why we got to have those the membership psychic development nights. Yeah. So tell me what you guys think. You know, like we have that for the members. Would you be interested in that? Trying to develop, use the membership group to do that? Let me know. ParanormalSoupJBland@gmail.com.
Or what you would love to see as an extra.
Yeah, let me know. But I'm going to end the show because I got to be up early. I've been suffering insomnia lately, and I need to force myself to go to bed. Of course, I've been sitting here drinking coffee late at night, which I shouldn't do. U7 Radio tried on AI Art Bell. It was weird and creepy. What are you talking about, Alan? What are you talking about? They have an AI Art Bell?
No.
What? Like it's an AI faking Art Bell? Don't tell me that. I'll have to look into that one. Oh. Can't have an AI fake Art Bell. No. That's just not going to happen. It's like when I heard AI try to reproduce, make its own Nirvana song. I'm like, yeah, it sounds like Nirvana without a soul. That's
Just like
yeah,
the
it kind of sounds like
people,
Nirvana, but without a
people
soul.
without a
Don't.
soul.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm here I am competing against AI Art Bell now. Besides, there you go. I my show doesn't stand at all up to even the thousands of libraries of Art Bell shows out there. Are way better than mine. But I do it because I love it. I'll be competing against Art Bell for the rest of my life because you can go back there and listen to any of his old shows and be entertained. And U7 Radio and all those other ones have it. Talkstream that I'm on has a bunch of old Art Bell channels you can listen to, and I still do. It'll just sleep through a cup of coffee, but no more. Yeah, same here. I used to drink coffee, and but I only have the coffee late at night on show night. I only do it on show night. Any part of the day that I have coffee is in the morning, and then I have in the afternoon one Coke. I only allow myself one Coke to drink, Mexican Coke, no fructose, sugar, whatever, corn syrup. And I don't have any caffeine at night. And in the last 2 nights, I didn't have caffeine, but I was tossing and turning, and here I am drinking I just took a sip of coffee, and what am I doing? I need to go to bed. Yeah, it's like comparing yourself to Jordan. Exactly. Yeah, like I said, you can the whole plethora library. If you've never heard Art Bell, there's plenty out there. It'll keep you entertained. It doesn't matter. It's like time travel. Somewhere in time with Art Bell. It really does. It's like time travel, but you'll be entertained. Trust me. Even my now 13-year-old son, when we went on a trip when he was 9, was fully entertained by Art Bell. We had a 2-hour drive, and it was just me and him, and he loved every second of the Art Bell episodes. And this stuff way before he was born. So, yeah. All right, guys, I'm going to call it on that. Next Sunday, like I said, Tony Rothman is our guest. Definitely be talking about his new device. Hopefully, we can maybe get a live demonstration. I'm hoping. We'll see. I don't know. We'll find out more. Next Sunday, same bad time, same bad channel, 10 p.m. Central, 11 p.m. Eastern. 8 p.m. Pacific time. Check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Keep follow and subscribe. Keep sharing out and telling your friends about Paranormal Soup. And like I said, you can help support the show with either becoming a Patreon member, YouTube member, or Super Chat. All those people that help donate, thank you so much. Your donations helps pay the bills. All right, guys, have a great night. See you next week.